I should probably turn our attention to Talk's Royal Correspondent Rupert Bell. He joins me now, and this is the man, Rupert, who not only have I known him for many years, and does he have real royal knowledge and expertise, this is the man who's been presenting the award to Princess Anne last night at the London International Horse Show. He does horses, he does royals. Some people would say, how can you tell the difference? Well done to you. You do. Look, you're on our screens. You are in the presence of royalty and greatness. You actually know what you're talking about, which is unusual for anybody here on this station. Rupert, good evening to you.
Good evening. Yes, James, I had the privilege last night because I have another hat as chairman of the British Equestrian Media Association away from my royal duties, and I was able to give the Princess Royal, Princess Anne, a Lifetime Achievement Award for her involvement in horse sports, which in her life has included being European champion when she was 21. She was also BBC Sports Personality of the Year in that year. She's an Olympian, but also after her riding career finished, she has been a long-standing administrator in the sport, and at one stage was president of the FEI. She's been member of the IOC. She's been a fierce defender of equestrian sport, and I was very honoured to be able to present the award to her last night when she attended the show, which is going on as we speak at the moment for the rest of the week. So, yes, and she was very honoured to receive it, and it was a privilege to present it to her.
She's an extraordinary lady. I've had the privilege of meeting her on a couple of occasions. On one occasion, I was also with another hat on. I was as Vice President of the Royal Albert Hall, which I've mentioned already this evening. I'm a trustee. It's a national charity. Of course, they turn up to various events, and I was welcoming members of the royal family where you're doing that, and she was indeed one of them, and she took one look at me and she said, "You don't do this all the time, do you?" And then she just looked at me and she went, papers. And then smiled, because, of course, for many years I've reviewed papers and done all sorts of things. So she's a wonderful lady. And the reason that I wanted to mention not only that is because you know of these individuals and how hard they work, and the fact that some members of the royal family have managed to do an incredible job, either for the causes that they really champion or for the areas in which they have become expert. And yet we have rogue members of the royal family who seem, for whatever reason, to be unable to do their duty. Prince Andrew, back in the news again. I mean, you just couldn't make it up. This time, we've got, I mean, even on, in the Sun newspaper, they're saying, this scandal could be even worse than previous scandals. I don't actually think that the relationship between a Chinese spy is worse than his relationship with Epstein, because one was condoned by the UK government and the other wasn't. But either way, I mean, the damage from Andrew just continues, doesn't it, Rupert? It
does. I mean, he just doesn't seem to be able to choose his friends properly and the people he associates with, because he's a rudderless ship. But being fair to him, he was given that role, and anybody that he spoke to in that role, somebody in government or somebody in the civil service would have vetted them, wouldn't they? Or is that not the case? Well, he had this Pitch at Palace organisation going. He was a trade envoy, but he had that job taken away from him because, again, getting into a bit of a problem with one or two of the people that he dealt with. But then he kept up this Pitch at Palace, of which this alleged Chinese spy was involved with. So the whole thing, he's been looking for money. And by all accounts, with this Pitch at Palace, for commissions, he was supposed to be getting 2%. So he's been trying to make sure that he can pay his way at the Royal Lodge. And he just doesn't seem to be able to read the room. He's convinced of his rightness, I think, most of the time, and that he thinks he knows best, and he won't take counsel. And is that part of the problem here? That you've talked about Princess Anne. I think she comes across as somebody who is deeply aware of her privilege and position and responsibilities, and is able to make good judgment about those around her, how she should conduct herself and the things that she should say and do, and also to understand the interrelationship between being a human being who happens to be part of an institution and the institution that is therefore part of you and what your role and responsibility is. Andrew seems to be unable to differentiate between the two. He seems to think his position comes with a sort of divine right, and whatever he says is correct. Well, that's just not the way the world works. And that's his problem. He just goes into the room, almost at times like a bull in a china shop, and he just sort of thinks, well, we'll do it my way. And he then doesn't think of the consequences, and thinks, well, and he's probably thinking for number one, was really some of the other members of the royal family. Of course, you allude to the Princess Anne. They know that they've got a bigger picture, and the bigger picture is to make sure the royal family is seen in a positive light. And yet he's throughout his life has got himself into difficult situations, most notoriously, as you say, with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, he supposedly $10 million or pounds was paid to sort of keep that out of all court, and it was sort of washed away. But, and of course, he's not been found guilty of anything, but by association. And its problem is it's by association of his friends. And if you look through his career, there have been long-standing problems with the people that he's been dealing with on a professional level.
And I think part of that, I suppose, am I right in saying that has all come from, and it stemmed from the fact that if you are not in direct line to the throne, you might be and find peace and happiness with the role that you have, or you might alternatively perhaps get I don't know, wishes above your station. I think that it's because you don't have control or the same control over finances or as much money as your sibling who is in pole position. It means that you perhaps get jealous and you see the opportunity to use your position to get hold of money, to get hold of access, to use that access to give you a life that perhaps you shouldn't necessarily have.
Well, let's be honest, that applies to two members of the royal family. You could have been talking about the one living in America by saying exactly what you said in that last bit from you.
Well, far be it from me to be a man of insight. But then let's talk though about what happens. So pre-Christmas, normally the royal family gets together and they have a presumably a Christmas lunch. It's not just a family affair, from what I understand. There's an element of sort of like celebration, bringing people together, the closest people who are part of the royal family. So it's not like the family gathering that takes place at Sandringham, but it is kind of an event. It would appear as if that sort of invite list is falling apart a little bit. So Andrew's been persuaded not to go, and it sounds like Kate and Wills are skipping that as well. Why are they missing it?
Well, they've gone off to Norfolk with their family. And presumably, because the school holidays have begun for private schools, so they've upped sticks and atom up to Norfolk. And that's where, obviously, we saw they spent the summer holidays, and they've gone there ahead of time. And I suppose all the family will be getting together. They're saying there's going to be over 40 people sitting down for hopefully a well-cooked turkey on whether it's Christmas Eve or on Christmas Day. So they've gone early. Obviously, Andrew and Sarah aren't there. One or two other members are not there. But it is a big family gathering, as you say. Around about 70 people attend. So
I mean, I suppose if you've had the year that Kate and Wills have had, to be fair, I think they probably deserve a little bit of peace and quiet, Kate particularly, and perhaps that's the reason for that. But I'm assuming that, given that this has taken place, what is the likelihood that Andrew will turn up at Sandringham on Christmas Day for that walk to the church? I'm assuming he won't be doing that this year.
Well, by all accounts, Sarah's persuaded him not to go, and by all accounts will stay at the Royal Lodge. It's going to be a lonely affair, unless he maybe sneaks and goes and stays with his daughter and son-in-law somewhere, one of them. And Sarah's, by all accounts, his ex-wife, who, of course, lives in Royal Lodge, has supposedly, according to the king, has helped sort of be a bit of a broker to persuade him not to come, because they don't want, because whatever happens in that walk, if Andrew's there, it will be the main talking point. And they are very mindful of trying to avoid sort of the headlines being the wrong sort. Now, given the year they've had, and if maybe the focus will be on the king, maybe the Princess of Wales as well, if she does the walk, because if we remember, 12 months ago, the last time we saw her in a sort of, when we thought she was well, was at Christmas in that walk. It was only a few weeks later that, of course, it was revealed that not only she, but the king was suffering from different variations of cancer.
Well, exactly. And of course, at this time of year, one's certainly hoping and wishing that they are not only well, but recovered. And, having seen the king out and about on various occasions, whilst he is, carrying on with his job, I think he is looking perhaps a little tired and worn, and one would hope time for rest and recuperation. But meanwhile, the Queen, I mean, this is quite unusual, is it not? So she was spotted during the week going out shopping. I mean, everybody likes a little bit of shopping, and we all know, and indeed I've had the pleasure of meeting the Queen at a number of occasions, prior to her being Queen, I might add, at a certain shop called Fortnum & Mason. And she seems to like it, and she was there this week. I mean, how unusual is that for the Queen just to go out shopping?
Well, I think probably for her, it's probably not, because she probably she's a no fuss bother type of woman, and says, right, I want to go out Christmas shopping. Look, she's going to Fortnum & Mason. It's not as if it's your shop on the street. Going to your local Boots to go and pick up a last-minute gift.
Yeah, you say that, but their former chief executive argued for years there was something for everybody there. It wasn't just a shop for the posh people.
Well, I've wandered around there. You can get you can buy lots of tea leaves, but I don't know anyone now who serves up real tea, but in beautiful jars and things. But well, maybe you do, James.
I do, actually. So the next time you, Rupert Bell, are in Frinton-on-Sea, the invitation is there. Whether it's down at the Frinton-on-Sea Lawn Tennis Club or in my house, you can come and have a proper cup of loose leaf tea, or maybe even in the beach hut. I love loose leaf tea. I don't understand why people insist on bags every 5 seconds and can't make a proper cup of tea. It's not that hard.
Well, I know it's not that hard, but it's we're obviously, you like a little bit of luxury and a proper tea with a lovely thing to pour it through, so you don't get the tea leaves in your cup, and you've got your bone china at the ready. So I would suggest that the Frinton tennis stuff, keeping everybody very happy. But
well, let's just say that I'm proliferating that myth that seems to follow me around like incorrectness. But a really good cup of tea is important. But I think there are lots of things there, and I guess, as you say, it is a sort of very different approach that she's had to things, and since she wasn't at certain events, it's good to see that she seems to be back to health and out and about. In terms of stories that will either resonate from this year, I mean, it seems sad that we're still talking about Harry, we're still talking about Andrew and the damage that they've caused. 2025, are we going to see an end to that, or do you think we're going to see more revelations?
Well, the Andrew and Harry sagas don't seem to be ending anytime soon. They're going to be focused on Harry and Meghan because their Netflix deal. Will we see this cooking program? The polo program has been generally poorly received, and Netflix executives will not be happy with that. So I don't.
Well, I'm not surprised. I mean, you take one look at it; it's boring, dull, and it's just pointless.
Well, yes, and as I described, if you listen to the final episode, I'm a great advocate for the film Dodgeball. The commentary sounds, you could just lift the commentary from Dodgeball and put it on there and feel like you're watching a spoof documentary. But anyway, that aside, I would have to say that the saga's not going to go away, because for Meghan and Harry, they've got to build on trying to find their way forward in whatever shape or form it takes. But their commercial operations, because I think people know that they haven't got anything else to sell, but now trying to make it commercially viable. Now, you want to look at a couple who make it work within the royal family who are not frontline royals, you just need to look at the Tyndalls, who managed to navigate their way through commercial life and making deals, but are still part of the royal family and don't seem to rock the boat, but seem to be able to create it and get it right.
Or I have to say,
the benchmark.
Or I have to say, Tom Parker Bowles, who continues to write. He writes his books. Very good writer, credible in his own right, and just gets on with it and manages his way through. It must be tremendously difficult to be in that position.
To look at separately, bearing in mind that he's the son of the Queen and not of the King, so therefore he's come at it from a different angle. Of course, he's mindful of his situation, but he's just got on with it. And there was a very good article that he. In one of the papers about how he has to navigate his life and not seem to be cashing in, but he knows it is, but he's got, the way he works is by being good at his job.
Correct.
And that's the important thing, and he puts in the hard yards. And it's the same for the Tyndalls. They know they are commercially a brand that works, but they know how to do it without seemingly upsetting people along the way, because they're prepared also to put the work in.
Right, just finally to you, Rupert, because we're almost out of time. Just finally to you, in terms of the Andrew thing, if you were giving some advice on how to sort of stub it out, you know, the story and the gift that keeps on giving, what would you do with a troublesome Andrew?
If I was, well, I'd never want to be Andrew, but the advice I would give him: get out of Royal Lodge, downsize, regroup, and just look as if you're a human being for a change, rather than stuck in your ivory tower and convinced by your own rightness.
Well, then there we go. That said it very clearly. Rupert Bell, Talk's Royal Correspondent. Thank you very much indeed for bringing us up to date on all of that.